Hey, Brooklyn. Hi. I want to speak a little bit today about my story, and then I actually want to tell you about this philosophy I have called atomic living, and I want to tell you why it matters. So I grew up here in New York City. I grew up in Manhattan, and I started drumming when I was 12. It was at a camp in Maine. I thought it was really cool and kind of feministy and badass and debaucherous, and I stayed with it. And growing up, my family was very involved in philanthropy and humanitarian issues. My parents started the Giving Back Foundation, so in our home we were hosting guests like Hillary Clinton and members of the Eleanor Roosevelt Foundation. So I always thought by the time I got to Georgetown University, I was going to do politics. I was sure of it. And I loved math at school, so by the time I came around to choose my majors, I chose math, political science, and I chose women's studies as a minor. And you go into these like annoying career counseling meetings, and they're like, yo, you seem lost. I'm like, yo, I might be lost, but I like all these things, I like all of them. I was interning for the mayor in my second year, the mayor of DC, and a bunch of people were protesting outside his office this homeless shelter that was being closed. The mayor said it was dilapidated, it wasn't supposed to be closed, but all these people were like, no, you're doing this, man, because you're trying to make money. You just want to build a condo here. We're not stupid. And that night, I went out, just with a couple of friends, to Thievery Corporation's lounge. I'd been hearing about this and I've been trying to go. It's like an old embassy and they've turned it into a nightclub. And Thievery's band was playing. And I looked around the room and I actually noticed that so many people who were at that political rally that day were at the club. And the band was singing about what had happened earlier that day. And I realized in my mind, oh my God, this music thing that I'm super interested in, this politics thing, boom, it exists in one location. And I've always known this. I reflected on it a little bit. I was like, okay, maybe my interests don't have to be so modular. I want to go with that a little bit more. And in these formal career counseling things, they're always trying to make you choose. If you really want to do this drumming thing, you got to drum every day. If you want to do this politics thing, you got to. I was like, yeah, but I like all these things equally. I started thinking to myself, what are other ways that I can tie my interests together? I remember I was supposed to be studying for one of my finals that I had in my last year. My friend's like, yo, we've been studying so much, man. Let's just go have a beer and just chat about life. I'm like, yo, I would much rather do that. Let's go. And I was complaining to him about the show that I'd played earlier where I couldn't get this drum to be tuned properly. And he was like, Kiran, have you looked at the options for our math, the classes we can take in our last semester? And I was like, no, why? He's like, they suck, dude. They're so bad. What if we use mathematics to try to figure out how most efficiently to tune your drum? I was like, that is amazing. So again, I was like, this is an opportunity to marry the math and the drumming, boom, and actually have all these different things work together as one, because at the end of the day, I'm one human. So we did that. We actually modeled waves in 2 dimensions, which ended up representing the vibrating drum membrane that is the surface of a drum. And we studied what are the different areas that you can give energy to a drum, and how can you most efficiently play a drum so it sounds the best, and how do you know to mathematically tune it? So all this good stuff was happening, and I was like, all right, I don't have to always make these trade-offs, and I liked this, I was onto something here. But by the time, I graduated, I really had no opportunities. I had gone to LA a couple times to try to find something. I found an internship, and I found some love. I found love. So I was like, okay, well, love is the best thing that I have going on for me right now, so I'm gonna move to LA. And Indian parents don't wanna hear that. They're not trying to hear that you have an internship and that's it after 4 years of very expensive education. But I was like, yo, but this feels good. Like, I don't wanna jam through some irritating job. I wanna just feel love, and I have an internship, come on, that's quite good. So the internship was at Universal Music Group, it was at Interscope. And the head of digital marketing found out that I was a math major. She was like, I don't know why the hell you're here, but listen, we can use you. I keep getting all these data, this is what she said. She said, I keep getting all this data from YouTube, from Spotify, from iTunes, from SoundCloud, from Facebook. Everyone's talking about having to get like 1 million YouTube likes, YouTube views, but is this really what it's about? Maybe you can help me find some correlations. I have no idea how to do this stuff, but I'm like, yeah, let's do it, I'm gonna try. So I go home and I'm playing with different things that I see. We try to figure out what is the barometer for Lady Gaga to have to hit on YouTube, for it to be meaningful, for it to translate to sales. Is Spotify a growing medium or a shrinking medium? Does that mean when we put out a song on Spotify, should it have 1 million streams the first day and then it tends to go down, or does it go up? I mean, these are questions that the industry, the music industry, is facing, and no one has the answers to them. And I had gone to a major label because I wanted to start to answer these questions for myself, but they actually asked me to start trying to problem solve. So I was doing all this, and we had a lot of amazing experiences sort of on the ground for the past 2 years, innovating things like, when 50 Cent puts out his next song, do we do it before the YouTube video comes out or after? What's the most optimal time? So I got to do all these fun projects that were my boss's vision. But I thought to myself, I was like, well, she has an MBA. And this other guy, the CFO, also has an MBA. And they're the ones really, in my opinion, leading a lot of change at Interscope, at a major label. What if I'm able to apply for my MBA and think about business strategies, new innovative business strategies, and learn from other industries to come back and problem solve for the music industry? There's actually a huge area for opportunity here. So I applied this year, I got into Harvard in March, and I left Interscope. And I was like chilling, like hanging out in LA, downtown Los Angeles. It was really fun, like playing music, whatever. And in July, I got an email in my inbox. Yo, Kiran, we found out about you through Interscope. MIA wants you to come on the road with her next week. I'm like, what are you talking about right now? What is this email? This is amazing. But I had a plan. My plan was to go to Harvard, so what am I supposed to do? Well, I said, look, there's 3-4 dates here. They're just in the summer. I'm gonna do them, whatever. I don't know what will happen after that. And then this kept happening. They said, okay, well, you know, can you do these dates in September? And I'm like, where are you trying to send me? They're like, Poland. I'm like, yeah, I think I can go to Poland. It's gonna be all right. So on a very literal level, the way I've been managing this past 4 or 5 months with the MIA tour and going to Harvard Business School full time, on a very literal level, yeah, we just have dates mostly on the weekends, so it's lucky. And the couple of times when they are on the week, maybe I'll have to miss a couple of days of school. I think I've missed 3 dates now. It's not so bad. But the craziest one I would say was in New York, Terminal 5. We played 2 shows at Terminal 5, and down the street, we did a Brooklyn release party for her album. And I mean, it was when someone gives you like 2 amazing opportunities, they're like, do you want to learn with some of the best people in the world and also go to Japan and Chile and Argentina? You're like, I don't want to choose, I just want to make it work. So on a psychological level, I was analyzing this and I was like, how did all this stuff happen? And I want to share this theory I sort of created with you all called atomic living. So imagine a situation, it's like Saturday, you go to the farmer's market, that's what I do on my Saturday. You run into a friend, you know, and the friend's like, oh, Kiran, I haven't seen you in so long. Can we have a coffee together? Like, I want to catch up. And I'm like, oh my God, I really want to go with this friend, but today's my laundry day, man. I haven't done laundry in a long time. And I gotta, you know, send these emails. I'm like, today's the day I clean my house. But I really want to go with this friend. Atomic living says you have to go. Because in that moment, there's so much meaning in that interaction and so much good can happen. Who knows what will happen, really? So you go and she says, you know, we're going to a show tonight. You have to come. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds awesome. Okay, let's go. And then I'll be at the show and I'll see someone drumming and I'll be like, oh my God, that beat is awesome. I want to learn that beat. And I'm like, no, tonight's the day. I was supposed to sleep early and catch up and blah, blah, blah. I would say no. If you want to go and learn that drum, you have to go. So I'll go and I'll spend some time in the studio and I'll learn and I'll play and I'll practice it. And that will be the beat that MIA would have wanted me to learn, you know, and I know it because of atomic living. Now, this could sound like some new age, like hippie excuse for being a flake, you know, and I hear that. And I've thought a lot about this, you know, and I would argue to that atomic living works both ways because there's so many times when stuff doesn't work out. Last night when I was leaving Boston to come here, my flight was 3 hours delayed, and I was like, perfect, ain't no thing. I got emails to write, a test to study for, I had a final this morning, a TED Talk to review. Atomic living works both ways. If someone cancels on you, hopefully because they were living atomically, you can say, all good, man, I have laundry to do. Today's the day I had to sleep early. So what happens is that in each of these amazing micro interactions, I was thinking, if you make decisions based on what feels good to you, and you have to do a little soul searching, you know, for me, I was like, well, I love fun, creativity, absurdity, feminism, art, creative output, intellectualism. I love drumming, math, women's studies. I love politics. As long as you sort of have a sense of what matters to you, these decisions actually come quite naturally. And even at Harvard, they keep trying to get me to do this like 5-year plan. What's your 10-year plan? I'm like, I don't know about all that. All I know is that in this moment, this thing over here feels so good, I have to say yes. And I'll figure it out as I go. Another friend to me said, listen, Kiran, okay, that's all good, but in an office, this whole atomic living thing, it's not possible. I said, yeah, but if you got there by atomic living, and you got there because each of your passions led you there and they matter to you, I would argue that that natural boundary that the office creates, and when I say natural, I mean something that you can't control. I would argue that's actually quite an amazing thing, because you're optimizing the quality of each of your interactions because they're within a parameter of something that you wanted to be doing anyway. And I came to that because I was like, well, I want to exist at Harvard with all these smart people who can teach me about problem solving for the music industry. And I also want to be in tour, engaging with people who are creative and absurd and queer and like magical, because these are the kinds of things that I like. I think often about how I personally can problem solve in the music industry. And I feel quite grateful that everyone's saying, oh, the music industry is changing, why would you ever want to work on it? I see it as like a huge opportunity for new minds and new creativity and new people to come out. So first, I think on the more literal side, I say, yeah, data and analytics, big data. This is a whole conversation a lot these days. A lot of what my boss was teaching me. So I do like the marketing element and using my mathematical skills to sort of create algorithms that might predict the next artist. All this kind of thing is very fascinating. And when I left Interscope, one of the best things my boss there ever said to me, she was like, Kiran, listen, I know you like this whole feminism thing and you like to talk about gender equality or whatever, but listen, in my experience, it does not matter if you are a man or woman, young or old, gay or straight, black or white. In business, the best ideas win out. And I was so grateful for this. It was like a nugget of hope. And that led me to the next thing, because I was like, okay, if that is true, if we assume that the best ideas win out, then my job is to make sure that A, I'm generating the best ideas possible, and B, that the best ideas around me are heard. So when I came to my MBA at Harvard, two things came to mind. With each case that we read, I'm constantly thinking, I'm like, how does this accounting case relate to music? Maybe we expense the cost of recorded music or something. Or and we had this other case in our lead class where SG Cowan was hiring the same people over and over again because they had this hiring bias. And I was like, God, that's just like one of the mistakes the major labels made. They were like, well, this one artist was successful, so let's keep trying to recreate it. And they got a lot of flack that way. And I may not necessarily have understood that if I wasn't thinking of these different ideas. Another thing we do is called Music Minds gatherings. We host a bunch of different people from different backgrounds. We're like, yeah, you in finance, and you in consumer packaged goods, and you in marketing. Let's talk about weird shit in the music industry. It doesn't matter if we're right or wrong, man. We're trying to get the best ideas going. I always sit here and wonder, like, what are all the little mini revolutions that could be happening because of these atomic moments that are around us? Because if you say, you meet someone at the TED Talk today, and they're like, yo, what are your interests? Like, how are you doing? And you're like, oh, I really want to talk about this, but I actually have this other thing I have to go to. But if you wanted to stay there, just say, let me stay for a second. Because the 1% chance that something really, really rad could happen in this moment is so much more worth the fact that it could just be nothing, and you're just doing that plan over and over again. The final thing that I think I can contribute to music when I think about these different interests is the touring. I really feel like anyone who works in the music business should have gone on tour at least once. Let me tell you why. 2 weeks ago, I was in Chile with MIA. And we had this moment where you have all the fans rush the stage. And I'm sitting there and I'm like drumming, I'm like, and the front row comes onto the stage. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, we're doing this even in Chile. Like, it's a huge festival. It's like a stadium of people. They rush the stage. I'm like, all right. Then some of my friends who had visited me from Georgetown, they were in Chile. They rushed the stage. And then Solange Knowles, whose band had played just before, her band rushes the stage. And I'm like, what is happening right now? Solange's band is dancing to my beats right now. This is so dope. And this atomic moment, boom. And what you see is this euphoria and a very visceral engagement between fan and artist. And you need to understand that from a very raw, emotional place to be able to actually want to contribute to the music industry or to whatever industry it is that matters to you. You have to know what's the reason. Something as simple as that, just happiness, like pure euphoria. One other element I'll share with you is I had this, when we were flying back from Mexico City, I got upgraded to first class and right next to MIA, and I was like, oh God. This is like in the beginning when I was touring with her too, so I was, still trying to figure out my relationship with her. I was like, maybe I should just pretend I still am in economy. I'm like, okay. So I sit next to her, and I have to start reading my cases because my HBS class is the next morning. So I start doing my homework. She's like, what are you reading? I'm like, my homework for tomorrow. She's like, let's see it. I'm like, okay. So I hand her my case. And there we are, I'm just reading Harvard cases with MIA on the plane. And I'm like, wow, this is really happening right now. This is so absurd. MIA is deeply critical of the education I'm getting at Harvard. Deeply critical. Constant focus on the bottom line, hierarchical structures. But I feel so grateful that she's telling me all this, because then when I go to that classroom, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh my God, I should be a little bit more conscientious of what I'm doing. But when I'm in that Harvard Business School classroom, I'm like, how can I use all this business strategy and this business understanding and understanding what finance even means to make the life better for the next musician over? And I think about this, I'm like, well, as each of us try through atomic interactions to bring each of our passions closer and closer together, I would argue the best ideas win out, and the best ideas are heard even faster than they ever would have been. So thank you so much for listening to me today, and TEDxBrooklyn, here we go.